Fantastic. Oh, it paused. There you go. Awesome. Good morning, everybody who is currently joining us via Zoom. My name is Tatiana Calderon, and we'll get started in a few minutes just to give people a moment to get situated. So if you need anything, please do so now, and we'll begin in a couple of minutes. I also do want to share that we are having this presentation is available with closed captioning as well as interpretation for Spanish this morning, which I will now provide the instructions in Spanish for our attendees to join. So, buenos días a todos que nos están viendo por la plataforma de Zoom o Facebook. Gracias por estar aquí hoy. Nada más les quería decir que hoy siempre brindamos servicios de interpretación simultánea para el español. So, por favor, de hacer clic en el globo al fondo de su pantalla donde dice interpretación y luego haga clic en el idioma que desee escuchar, en este caso español. Si quiere escuchar solo al intérprete, puede también hacer clic en Mute Original Audio, que silenciará el audio original. So, muchísimas gracias y bienvenidos a Sinergia. Estamos agradecidos de tenerlos aquí hoy. So before we begin, I just want to let you know that we are broadcasting today's event via our Facebook page. So we want to give a warm welcome to those joining us there. Just a few housekeeping notes. We are recording this presentation and a poll will be activated at the end of the presentation. So we encourage you to just stay a few minutes at the end after our presenter is finished just to fill out the poll. All right, and let's get into it. So good morning, everybody. My name is Tatiana Calderon. I'm the Autism Initiative Coordinator here at Sinergia's Metropolitan Parent Center. Just a few words about Sinergia's Autism Initiative. Our Autism Initiative project is funded by the grant from the New York City Council under its Autism Initiative. This project supplements the work of Sinergia's Metropolitan Parent Center by bringing increased awareness to New York City residents, particularly to communities with large Spanish-speaking populations, about the growing population of children diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. Its strong outreach component targets families of children with suspected or a known diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder, ASD, who are not receiving appropriate educational, health, and other related services. The initiative will link them to other services and supports that will meet the individual needs of children and families. So once again, thank you all for being here on this rainy Friday. We're absolutely happy that you can be here with us via Zoom. And I'll be passing over to our presenter for today. He's very well known, our very own JC Cortez. So JC, you can go right ahead.
Good morning, New York. Good morning, everybody. It's great to be back with you. And hopefully you are dry. Yes. Tatiana and I both trekked in and made it to the office without having to use a raft or a boat. But here we are. Never a dull moment in our great city, of course. So we have a lot to cover today. It's back to school, right? Or at least a little bit after back to school. Hopefully now the dust has settled. Yes, anything that you have questions about, I have received your questions through your registration. Thank you so much. You've given me a lot to consider, and I hope we cover a lot of it today. Please feel free to ask questions throughout this presentation. I do not encourage people to wait until the end, because at the end, then you're like, I forgot what I wanted to ask. So I have your questions as well. I have used them to guide and sort of fill in some fillers. So hopefully we cover it all, but please feel free to ask questions. If it is very specific to your case, to your child, please remember this is a public forum. You know, if you want to speak with us privately, you will have our emails at the end. And a reminder, we are recording this session, so it will be available on YouTube and Facebook rather, shortly thereafter today. You will also receive a copy of these slides and the presentation for today. So please, please just pay attention, be engaged, grab that coffee, stay awake, stay alert, stay dry. And yes, let's go ahead and get started. I would also like to preface that I will be looking at the chat, but Tatiana is also watching it for me in case I don't see it. But yes, and remember, this is advice. This is not legal advice. We are not lawyers. And so if you have specific questions about your case and you require legal guidance, please consult an attorney or a lawyer. And yes, so let's go ahead and get started. And all right. Okay. All right. Can everybody see my screen? I'm assuming yes. I cannot see the chat. So good morning, everybody. My name is JC Cortez. I am the Director of Training and Development for all of Synergia. And I am happy to be here for this presentation on back to school special education, know your rights. We're going to cover a lot of the basics of special education, how to navigate it. And then, of course, we will talk about some interesting topics, of course, of late, specialized transportation, in this case, busing, right? We seem to have averted a strike, thankfully. But it seems like we're still not completely out of the clear. So we want to definitely touch base on that. And we also want to talk about understanding how to use the New York City Schools account, which is available for most students across the city. So yes, it's important to know that because that's also where you can find some of your first updates, sometimes verifying information. I know one of the questions, the registration questions was asking, how do we know, for example, if the school is doing the related services that are on my child's IEP. One of the ways that you would do that is through the New York City Schools account, also referred to as the NYCSA account. So if you hear me say NYCSA, that is the New York City Schools account, but we'll talk about it in greater depth. But yes, so let's talk about it today. Let's have a great conversation and let's get started. I'm gonna skip this. Synergia, we have the Metropolitan Parent Center, which also has the Autism Initiative that supports parents of children with autism and have some great programming that we are love to share more with you about. Please check out our website. It should auto-populate on your screen as a part of this webinar. And also, we are working as a collaborative. As you know, special education impacts so many across New York City, approximately 10% of our city's population. And that also includes children. We cannot do this work by ourselves, of course, and we are proud to collaborate with our colleagues at Advocates for Children, as well as Include NYC and Long Island Advocacy Center. So yes. So today's agenda, as I said, we have a lot to cover. It's special education, the concept, IDEA. What is IDEA? Is it idea? What is it? How do you say it? What are the 6 principles behind it? And that includes due process. Due process, what is that? That's when you disagree with the IEP or what's being placed in the IEP. You know, how do you change that if somebody is unwilling? In this case, that somebody would be typically New York City Public Schools, also referred to as the Department of Education. They've recently gone through some rebranding. But yes, what does the special education process look like? Charter schools, we'll talk about charter schools briefly, as well as private schools. 504 plans, right? What is a 504 plan? There was a question in your questions today for what are the updates of the proposed changes to the 504 plans. We'll talk briefly about that. Also, New York City Schools account, as I mentioned, and then specialized transportation and some last advocacy tips. So as you can see, we have a lot to cover. So what is special education in general? Special education is a collection of services. They're specifically designed to meet the needs, unique needs of a child with a disability. So that means the unique needs, that means that they have to be individually developed to address that child's specific needs, right? We know, you know, there's a saying, if you've met one person with autism, you've only met one person with autism. The same is true with any other disability. It's not like you each have the same, nobody came out of, you know, the Ford manufacturing plant, you know, and like there's the same thing that's challenging for this one model of car. It's not like that. Disability is unique, it's individual, and therefore it requires individual and specialized design, right? How do we support this unique individual? The needs may be greater, they may be less. We don't know, right? So yes, each child is unique and special education is supposed to be individualized for each child. The instruction can take place in a classroom. It can take place in the home. It sometimes takes place in hospitals or residential institutions. It just depends, right? It depends on the need. And that's going to be really important for us to understand throughout this presentation. It is what the child needs. It's not what we want, it's what the child needs. So yes, so who's entitled to special education, right? A student with an impairment in need of special education or related services as a result of their impairment has one of 13 classifications of IDEA, under IDEA. Now, 13 classifications, that's 13 classifications of disability. That doesn't mean that there are only 13 disabilities. It just means that there are 13 categories under the IDEA, the Individual with Disabilities Education Act, which is what supports special education. It is the backbone, if you will, of all special education in the United States and its territories. So special education in New York City, this is our city. It's a very unique city. We are the largest city, of course, in the United States. We have the largest network, the largest school district in the United States. And so our challenges are very much an anomaly, but they are representative and reflective of what's happening across the country as well. It probably happens a lot faster here in New York, and we notice those issues sooner, but also how to tackle them, of course, as we know, because the city is so big, can also be a challenge in and of itself. But here's an example of special education as we go from bigger to greater, or macro to micro, as I like to say. During the 2018-2019 school year across the United States, roughly 27% of Latinos and 14% of Black school-age students, school-age student means from kindergarten to 12th grade, the percentage of those students receive special education services. In New York State, that percentage is higher. It's 32% of Latinos and 21% of Black students, respectively. However, in New York City, and this is very alarming, it's 49% of Latinos and 28% of Black students are receiving special education services. And that was in 2018, 2019. This was, not that long ago. And it's basically doubling the national rates. Why? We have to ask ourselves, right? Intersectionality is going to be a concern, especially as it was exacerbated throughout the pandemic. It's another way of saying, because of the pandemic, we know that students weren't evaluated. We know that teletherapy was not as effective. We know that some students didn't get any services at all. So these impacts, we're not going to see the data from that for a while, because data, as we know, was so hard to capture throughout the pandemic. So these statistics are going to look a lot worse here in a few years once we have the data, most likely. And we're already starting to see that, right? We're already starting to see a backup in impartial hearings. We're already starting to see a backup in mediations. We're seeing backups everywhere. The system is clogged and backed up even more. It already was before the pandemic. It's worse now. So yes, so this is something that we are definitely keeping an eye on. It's something that I encourage you to keep an eye on, so that you know what's going to happen in special education across the United States and here in New York, of course. So what is IDEA? You heard me refer to it earlier. It's the Individual with Disabilities Education Act. IDEA is about 45 years old. It is it is the backbone, as I said, of special education across the United States. And it's a federal law that describes what special education services for children with disabilities from ages 3 until they graduate or age out. Aging out is whenever, say, like, you're in 12th grade, you are 18, and for whatever reason, you stay longer than 1 year. So you're still, or maybe you're just going at a slower pace through school, right? Um, that's okay. You can stay in school until you are 21, and that is not when you first turn 21, but once you turn 22. So we just had some clarification from the Second Circuit Court of Appeals with regard to what that meant. If was it 21 when you're turning 21, or was it after you turn 21 and you're about to turn 22? It's the latter. So yes, an IDEA ensures that children with disabilities will receive a free and appropriate public education. It's also known as FAPE. You'll hear FAPE used a lot, especially around people within this that support this community in education, special education specifically, because it is so important. And yes, your child has a right to a free and appropriate public education. So yes, so children who qualify under IDEA are provided with these services and accommodations that are individualized to their needs. So the first principle and the most important principle is FAPE, free and appropriate public education, right? It provides special education and services at the public's expense, which means you do not pay for it. You as a parent do not pay for this at an appropriate state-approved school. That is a public school, typically. Um, in New York City, the public schools are managed mostly by New York City Public Schools, or formerly the New York City Department of Education. Um, so yes, students with disabilities receive the same educational opportunities as any child without. If everybody's going to a field trip, it does not mean because this student with a disability does not get to go because they have extra needs and they don't have the staff. No, that doesn't work that way. And the law clearly says that. So that cannot happen anymore. It did happen, and it was a common thing. Um, you know, special education, if we could talk about history and special education in the United States, we could talk about it for a while, for sure. Schools must provide students with an education, including specialized instruction and related services that prepare a student not only for their educational career, but also for employment, post-secondary education, or independent living, right? Life doesn't stop after high school, right? We know that. All of us here know that, right? We create families, we get jobs, we move, right? There are different things, and we have to be prepared to do that. And hopefully we will have gotten most of those skills throughout high school. And a student with a disability is no different. They should be equally prepared to the max for the same things, right? We want our children to enjoy and flourish in life and find a life that is meaningful to them and that they can enjoy. And we need to do everything that we can to support them. So interesting, free and appropriate public education. But what is appropriate? Your definition of appropriate might be different from mine. I think all of us can agree that we all want the best for our children. I think we all agree with that. However, the law doesn't say that. The law says it has to be appropriate. So even though we know that there's this fancy therapy available, right? If there are other things, other therapies available that aren't as fancy, that are equally effective, we have to try there. We have to start and work our way up. We can't just start at the top. You know, when we buy our first car, we don't go and buy a Mercedes Benz, right? We typically buy a used car or a junker or something because we're like, you know, if I wreck or whatever. It's kind of the same thing in similar ways. So we have to start with what is appropriate. So, you know, if a child isn't speaking enough, right? Uh, or if a child, let's just say a child fully speaks, is speaking without any issues at all, we wouldn't put that child in speech therapy. That doesn't make sense. It's not appropriate. So we have to think about those things. Um, According to IDEA, some of these necessities that schools are obliged to provide a student with a disability is an education that is designed to meet their educational needs, that addresses this one student's academic, functional, and behavioral requirements, and provides access to the general education curriculum and is provided within the student's IEP. And remember, appropriate does not mean best, right? The goal is for this child to be able to access the general education curriculum through different measures. So if we're all learning about the Civil War, then all students need to be learning about the Civil War. If we have to provide extra examples, extra modified instructional methods, then that has to be done. It's the same thing for a student with a disability as it would for a non-disabled student. So yes, they have to be able to access the general education curriculum. So how is FAPE achieved? Free and appropriate public education, right? We have to do that by providing the child with special services that can include academic needs, right? Support with math, support with reading, support with science, understanding those things, understanding behavioral needs, right? Um, you know, socializing. We don't force children to be social, but we do want to support them to be social if they want, right? And to learn how to engage and navigate those social exchanges. Speech and language services, how to be able to speak. Um, And that can be a number of things. It's important to remember, if you don't speak English, that does not mean you need speech and language services. That is not the case. Instructional modifications, does this student need an accommodation? Do they need an accommodation is something light. It's, kind of like, do you need a calculator? Do you need an extra sheet of paper? Do you need a break every 2 hours? Whereas a modification is like a complete change, an overhaul of the entire thing. So yes, does this student need instructional modification? Anything that can make make more a learning environment more achievable and appropriate and accessible for students with a disability. That's how FAPE is achieved. Number two, LRE. LRE stands for least restrictive environment. Least restrictive environment is really important because it says where we're going to place your child. Is your child going to stay in a general education classroom? Are they going to be in a separate classroom? Are they going to leave the classroom for the general education classroom for a little bit of the day to get therapy? Are they going to be in an integrated co-teaching class where it's 60% of non-disabled students with 40, not non-disabled, excuse me, 60% of students without an IEP versus 40% of students with an IEP, right? This is what LRE is talking about. Least restrictive environment says that a student who has a disability should have the opportunity to be educated with non-disabled peers to the greatest extent possible. So that means we want to be inclusive, right? That's where that inclusion concept comes in to play. Just because our child has a disability doesn't mean that they need to be locked off in a separate wing or locked off in the basement like they were 30, 40 years ago. That doesn't happen anymore. It's against the law. But this is what it's saying. It's like, not only do we not do that, we have to bring them into the spaces where they can be in the most around others for integration and for inclusion purposes. A student should be provided with supplementary aids and services necessary to achieve the educational goals if they're placed in a general education classroom. So if they're in general education, they still need to have all the supplementary aids, all the services that they can get, even if they have an IEP. And it happens. In New York City, least restrictive settings also include the ICT setting, integrated co-teaching. This is the continuum of New York City special education. And this is really great. It's a good visual for everybody to become familiar with, especially as you start to navigate special education, right? So at the bottom, we'll start with green, right? Green is going to be like where everybody starts. Everybody starts at the bottom, right? It's general education. And then we have like different modifications to general education, right? So we have the integrated co-teaching services where we have two teachers, one is general education, one special education. Then we have SETS, which is special education teacher support services. And we have that teacher in the classroom to work and support the students that need that, right? As you'll see on the diagonally across, forgive the New York City noise, right? We're kind of used to it. But on uh, running in blue diagonally, we see related services. We can have related services at any setting here on the continuum. All right. What are related services? That's like your paraprofessional. It's like physical therapy. It's speech therapy. We can have all of these no matter where our student is in the continuum of special education services. As you know, we go from the full green, the Kelly green at the bottom, to the pea green above it, which is special education teacher support services in a separate location. That's where they're getting those services outside of the classroom. That might be what we refer to as pull out, right? Pull out is when we take the student out of the general education classroom. Push in is when we provide those services in like the same classroom, but maybe in the back or off to the side. Um, and then we go up another level, right? More restrictive. As we go up, becoming more restrictive. So a special class might be a special class designed for a specific type of student, right? We have, what's a good example? We have ACEs programs, right? We have another one, if we go up a notch to special class in a specialized school, would be like the ASD and NEST Horizon programs, right? It's for a specific type. It's this very unique setting, and it's recreated, right? And then after we go there, The next level is home and hospital instruction. And home and hospital instruction is not the the home instruction that we were thinking of in the pandemic, where everybody was, working remotely. That's not home instruction. Home instruction is, and it's not homeschool either. Homeschool is when your student isn't even a part of the system. You are teaching them, you yourself. Home and hospital instruction is when your child is temporarily going to be out. So let's say they had to have an appendix removed, right? They had an appendicitis. They had to have something done. They had to have an intensive surgery. Um, Maybe they were in a horrible car accident, something. But they're going to be temporarily out. They cannot be in the school setting for whatever reason. And that can be a reason for home and hospital instruction. Um, but yes. And then above that is non-public day and residential schools, right? So where we know the Department of Education or New York City Public Schools, they know that they cannot provide a hospital, a hospital sterile like environment for this student who has a feeding tube, who has additional supports, who needs a nurse, who needs to have those tubes changed, right? And catheters, right? We could never do that in a public school. And the New York City Public Schools recognizes that. So this student is probably going to attend a non-public day school or a residential school. And no matter where they are in the continuum, they can still be getting those related services, right? So that's something to consider as well. Principle 3, evaluation. Um, Evaluations are critically important. Evaluations determine eligibility first and foremost. That's why we cannot, like I said at the beginning of this presentation, need. Does your child need this, or is this something you want? As if some, it's very different. What we want and versus what we need are very different, right? Um, and so, yes, if we're going to provide specialized instruction at the taxpayer's expense, we need to make sure that this child needs it and is going to benefit from it, especially when it comes to their education. After all, that is what we're trying to provide, a free and appropriate public education. So yes, evaluations gather information that we can understand the child's unique needs so that we can help them participate in the general curriculum and classroom. Also, there are a variety of tools and strategies. There's not one single test. Again, listen, there's not one single test that is supposed to be used to determine if your child has a disability. It is supposed to be a gamut of tools and strategies, and multidisciplinary, to gather that information, right? What do you, the parents, see at home? What was your social history? What was your pregnancy like? Have you seen your child do this? How do they interact with this type of situation? What do they do? How do they respond? It's a lot of collecting evidence and data. And yes, there will be some tests, but no one singular test or observation is going to be, oh, yes, I saw your child for 30 minutes and your child I know has this disability. It doesn't work that way. And it's not supposed to. And your information as a parent, because you know your child best, is going to be critically important throughout this entire process. So it's really important for you to be involved. Can't stress that enough. And yes, at the end of the day, you have to give your written consent to evaluations before an evaluation is conducted. So yes, and it has to be informed consent. What is informed consent? Informed consent is when you've had the opportunity to ask every question under the sun. Why is this professional using this type of exam or this type of test or evaluation? Do they have the credentials? How much experience do they have with children like mine? Um, why this exam versus the other? These are questions that you should be able to ask before you sign the dotted line and say, yes, go ahead and evaluate my child. That's informed written consent. Why is an evaluation necessary? I just said this. Evaluation determines eligibility. For special education services, an initial evaluation in all areas of concern is required. So if there's anything that you suspect a disability, like a developmental delay or a developmental milestone, you can find those developmental milestones on the CDC's website. If those are concerns and you haven't addressed them already in preschool or in early intervention, those are the two special education divisions before your child is 5 years old and in school. You can ask for an initial evaluation in these areas of concern. An evaluation carefully examines a child's abilities, strengths, and needs by a team that includes the child's parents, teachers, and specialists. The purpose is to determine whether a child has a disability or requires special education instruction or related services. So, are there timelines? We can't just do this when we feel like it. Nobody has that luxury, thankfully. And IDEA, the Individual with Disabilities Education Act, establishes that there is a 60 school day timeline for parents' consent for evaluation and the determination of eligibility and special needs of the child. Um, that means they have 60 days to do all the evaluations and within those same 60 days to develop an IEP, an individualized education program, which is basically a legally binding document that describes every detail of how your child will access the general education curriculum throughout that school year. It's only good for one school year. And yes, but they have 60 days, 60 school days to do that. So, even in the summer when most schools are closed, if the district office is open, that day counts. So that's almost every day except the holiday and the weekends, right? So yes, so a little bit more, give or take about 2.5 months time is about the max. An IEP, an individualized education program, needs to be reviewed and developed every year. Uh, reevaluations. So if your child is evaluated, excuse me, if your child is reevaluated, that cannot happen more than one time per year unless you and the school district mutually agree. Now, you can ask, and this is important, you can ask for an evaluation at any given point in time. Um, and if it's new, unless I mean, you have to justify why, right? But if you suspect some new area of disability, it's pretty much going to be done. Of course, after you give your informed written consent. But yes, but let's say I put in here not more than usually one time per year. It can happen sometimes. Let's say, for example, um, something unexpected happened in your child's development. All of a sudden, they're doing something completely different, or this behavior that was seemed very harmless earlier has now turned into something very dangerous overnight. Those are those cases where we might want to do an evaluation more than once in one year. They're very rare, right? Worst case example of a physical injury, right? Something happened physically, like all of a sudden overnight something happened. We reviewed them, evaluated them for this disability earlier, didn't seem like anything was there. All of a sudden something physical happened, or some trauma to the head, severe traumatic brain injury, something like that. These things happen, and that might be cause for a reevaluation that would be more than once in one year. If nothing happens, and let's say everything's going well, let's say you don't need an evaluation, nothing has happened, thankfully, your child seems to be meeting all of their IEP goals, and everything's fine, nothing new presents itself. If that's the case, that's great. However, every 3 years, we still have to do what's called the mandated 3-year reevaluation. Older, um, maybe 10 plus 15 years ago, that would have been called the triennial evaluation. Now it's called the mandated 3-year reevaluation here in New York City anyway. And yes, and again, unless you and the school district mutually agree to do it sooner, that will happen every 3 years. Why? We know, and we say this, right? We say this no matter disability or non-disability, children grow so quickly. One day they're 8 pounds, 7 pounds, 8 ounces, and then, a year later they're like 25 pounds. They're like, wait, what just happened? So yes, these children, they're growing, their brains are growing. Brain development doesn't stop until you're about 23, 24 years old. So your brain is constantly going, right? It's growing, it's multiplying, so cells are dividing. Biologically, your child is growing, biochemically, hormones in your child, they're awakening, so we have to keep track of these and how these impact disability, and how that disability is impacting our child's education and learning, which is so critically important, right? because that's going to determine the supports and services that our child needs, not what we want, what they need, and what also is appropriate. Let's talk about the IEP. I've kind of already talked about it a little bit. The IEP is the Individualized Education Program. It's created by an IEP team that includes you, the parents. You're the first members of this team. Why? Because you're the expert on your child. You might not know psychology or psychiatry or counseling or special education design or anything like that, but you know what's happening with your child. You know what triggers your child. You know what soothes your child. You know all of those things. You know every explanation. Even if you're a guardian, you still have more of an idea of knowing that child than anybody in that school does. So it's important that you're there. You have those stories, you have that history, you have that background. You see what is happening with your child when they're not in school, typically, right? You know the things that impact your child outside of school. You know that your child has that friend down the street and they don't go to the same school together, but they hang out, and then all of a sudden something happens to that friend. They move away, or somebody passes away, or somebody in the family. We saw that a lot during COVID. We know those things, and we as parents need to contribute that and share that with the IEP team who is there to support our child. So yes, you are going to be the first members of that team. Also, the IEP is a legal agreement. It's a legally binding agreement between the school district and the parents. It says the school district is going to provide this and this and this and this and this to your child for this school year so that they can learn. And IDEA, the law, even when we were in the pandemic, IDEA did not change. It does not say, that you cannot do this. It does not say, forgive me. My phone is ringing. I'll just let it ring. Yes, IDA doesn't stop just because of the pandemic. So just because the schools are closed, that does not mean that the school cannot provide all those services. They still have a legal obligation to provide every one of those services to your child. So yes, pandemic or not, your child's speech therapist is on maternity leave. That doesn't mean that the school district stops giving your child those services at all. They have to find another provider. So yes, so that's a legally binding agreement. It also describes the special education services that the student will need, and it will include the reasons why, right? It's also valid for one school year. I've already said that, and it's revised annually or whenever it's necessary, right? If something unexpected happens, then we might need to reevaluate it. If our child is meeting their IEP goals ahead of time, we might need to revise that so we can keep that child working towards something. Or if they're not meeting those IEP goals soon enough, we might have to review it again and say like, hey, what are we not doing here? But your involvement is going to be so critical, especially when it comes to placement decisions and least restrictive environments. You know how your child will be in a room with other people. You know how they already are. You have an idea. You have a better idea than anybody at that table before an evaluation. An evaluation will give us greater insight, right? But you already know some things as well. Principle 5, parent participation and student for that matter. Where are you going to participate? You're going to be participating in the evaluations. You're going to be asking those questions of the providers. No question is a dumb question. Please don't hold back. If it annoys somebody, that's their problem. That's not yours. This is for your child, and you are passionate and loving in every aspect to look after that child. So keep that in mind. If that bothers somebody else, that's on them. You're doing your job, and your job is to support your child as best as you can. So don't feel bad about those things. If somebody wants to get frustrated, but yes, you're going to ask those questions in those evaluations. You're going to ask you're going to support the eligibility for special education services. If your child needs something, you're going to advocate for it, especially if it's not on the IEP. If somebody's trying to change your child's IEP and you're just like, hey, wait a second, I don't think so. You're going to be the person probably to do that best. Also, when it comes to placement decisions, I don't think my child's going to do really well in an ICT setting because of their behavioral challenges. But I want to go on record and tell you this now. You know all these things. So yes, your rights as a parent are to participate in all meetings, also to receive all those reports and documents about your child's progress. And if you are a non-English speaker, that means in your native language. Uh, a student, at least at age 12 in New York City, will start to be invited to participate in the decisions regarding transition services, transitioning, right? We talked about IDEA says we have to be preparing students with an education that prepares them for post-secondary life, whether that is living independently, whether that is going to college, or whether it is something else. We still have to prepare that child for life after high school. So at the age of 12 in New York City, we will start to do that. We'll start with the vocational assessment. And that should happen the year that the child is turning 12. The student will be invited, excuse me, to come to the IEP meeting to talk about transition only. If you want to invite your child, though, when they're in kindergarten, just to come and say hi and introduce themselves in whatever capacity, you know, I encourage you to do that, because at some point we're going to have to teach our children to speak up for themselves, to tell people what they need, to tell people what they want, and to tell people when something isn't working. We want them to be able to communicate those things. And we know that at some point they're going to need to do this for themselves, so we need to prepare them for that as well, and this is the perfect way to do it. Just start bringing them in. They don't have to stay for the IEP meeting. We don't want our children to hear about the evaluations that are like abstract terms and sound like stereo instructions. We don't need that, but we do need them to learn how to speak for themselves and present themselves to somebody at some point. Principle 6, the last one, safeguards and due process. Safeguards and due process. Safeguards are, how should I explain this? Safeguards are tools that are used to prevent harm, right? So like, when we're going over a bridge on the side of a mountain or a hill, right? There's usually a guardrail. It's kind of like that. Except in this case, these are like more like protecting us from processes or protecting our children from going into places where they become violations of law, right? So parent notification, you're supposed to have parent notification in your native language of what's happening with your child. We suspect your child has a disability and we would like to invite you for a conversation to discuss evaluations. That's parent notification. If your child already has an IEP, and parent notification would be, we would like to have the annual IEP meeting in May, May 6th, May 7th, or 8th at your convenience and time. Please let us know which is convenient for you. And they have to do that at least 30 days, something like that. It depends on what type of notification. But yes, parent consent. You have to sign your consent, right? You have to sign and like say, oh yes, you can do this evaluation on my son. You can do this evaluation on my daughter. And once we determine what needs to be done, we can do this. We can implement this IEP. We can implement these services and these therapies. So yes, access to educational records. You have access to all of those things. That includes not only just report cards, not only just progress reports, but also incident reports. If there is something happened to your child, there's an incident report somewhere. There should be. Every school has to write up an incident report when something happens to a child. So, if you haven't seen it, oh, somebody bit my child today. Can I see the incident report? That would be, you have access to that. Also, opportunity to present a due process complaint. If you disagree with how an IEP is developed, created, designed, what's in it, what's not in it, you have the opportunity to complain. And you can do that formally. And we'll talk about that in a minute because that's what due process is. But yes, and also the right to participate in all meetings. So due process, we're not going to go into due process. Due process is a whole webinar of itself, and rightfully so. It's really important. You guys can check out a lot of these things in greater depth, at least an hour, hour and a half. Go to our YouTube page and you will see me talking to different people and different leaders across the city who work in these fields and are greater experts at this than anybody in the city of New York. please, I encourage you to check out our YouTube, and you can access all of that information there at your convenience. Mediation. Mediation, in a nutshell, mediation is where you and the school district voluntarily agree to talk and figure out what to make in terms of changes to your child's IEP. It's informal, it's collaborative, it's a lot quicker, it's less legalistic in the terms that you don't need a lawyer. We don't recommend you have a lawyer. Um, but it is something, it's a great step to working towards collaborating with the people supporting your child at the school. Remember, you're going to probably be working with these people for at least 2 to 3 years, maybe 3 to 5 years, depending on the grade level. So, you know, we have to learn how to work together and work as a team. We might not always agree, but we can talk about it. And you can do that through mediation. It's a great way of doing things. And yes, and you do that through a mediator who is not a related party to either you or the school district. So that exists for you. Due process hearing. In New York, we call that an impartial hearing. An impartial hearing is more formal. It's very legal. We do recommend here at Synergia that you have an attorney to represent you. You can represent yourself. It is a daunting process. It's a very complicated process, but you could do it yourself. It's a lot of work. It lasts a long time. On average, before, when all the impartial hearings were going through the Brooklyn office of the Department of Education, we knew that the average duration of an impartial hearing was 9 months. That's a whole school year just to get a decision. And you may like it, you may not like it, but it is there for you, and sometimes it is needed. Pendency case, if the school district is about to make some sudden change, you can file for an impartial hearing, which would basically be a pendency. It would stop everything. When you file for an impartial hearing, everything stops until a decision is made. And then we have the state complaint. We don't really talk a lot about the state complaint. And it's also an option available to you. The state complaint is very quick. It's very swift. You can do it yourself. It's relatively easy, and you will get results within 60 calendar days. That's pretty quick. Considering what I was just sharing about the due process hearing lasting 9 months. State complaints, you file a form with basically all your complaints, what you are alleging that the public school or public agency has done in terms of violation of rights for educating your child with a disability. And you write what that is, what you're alleging, what your solution is, and then you sign it, send a copy to the school district, send a copy to Albany, to the Department of the New York State Education Department, NYCED, and once they receive it, you typically will receive the findings and conclusions and decisions within 60 days. If you are filing for an impartial hearing, please remember anything that's in the impartial hearing, if you file a state complaint at the same time, you cannot, the state cannot listen to any aspect of what's in the impartial hearing. So if you have an impartial hearing already going, or you've already filed for one, the state can't touch it until that impartial hearing has been decided. If you, yeah, that's a really important thing to know. I could talk about due process all day, but yes, these procedural safeguards are going to ensure, however, that the rights of your children with disabilities are protected, that the parents are provided with the information needed to make decisions about evaluations and placement tests, right? They're also going to have these procedures and mechanisms that are in place to resolve disagreements between you and the school district, the state complaint, and due process. Also, your parental right to request in writing to inspect and review all educational records related to your child, not only those that are relevant to whatever the issue is. You can also ask for copies of these documents. That is also included within your rights. And the Department of Education, or New York City Public Schools, has 45 days to comply. You can request amendments if you find discrepancies. So for example, In the IEP, there's a section for parents desires or parent wants, and you can go on record and say, well, no, what I want for my child this school year is this, this, this. I want them to learn how to do their laundry. I want them to learn how to be better in the kitchen. I want them also to learn some financial literacy. All of those things, right? You've said those. If that's not included as the way it should be in the IEP, that isn't what you said, then that's your moment to say, hey, we need to correct the record. It's important that the record always be correct, because if for some reason down the road something happens and we have an incorrect record, it's going to be more challenging for us to clear that up if something happens than when we see it, when we first notice it. So make sure if you see something wrong in an IEP that you said or didn't say, or that isn't appropriate, or some inaccuracy, make sure that it's rectified. Notification rights. A school district must provide prior written notice whenever it proposes or refuses to initiate or change the identification or classification of your child, their disability. So let's say they want to change your child's disability from autism to other health impairments. You know, typically classifications, we're not going to go in this today, but typically classification talks about what is the disability impacting your child's learning most. Because some children, they might have different disabilities. They might have autism, but autism isn't what's impacting their learning most. It might be learning disability. They might be dyslexic as well. So which one is impacting their learning most? That's typically what the classification is. But if the school district is saying they want to change that, or they refuse to change it, they still have to let you know. So yes, also they have to let you know about an evaluation. Hey, we want to do an evaluation. Yeah, a parent needs to sign off on that. You bet the parent has to know. Also placement. If we want to change, oh, we want to change your child from an ICT class, we want to put them in a 6-to-1-to-1 class. That's 6 students, 1 paraprofessional, and 1 special education teacher. That's a very restrictive environment. If you don't agree with that, I mean, whether you agree with it or not, they still have to let you know. So yes. How do you access special education? So if you're in New York City and you go to public schools, you're going to access special education through New York City DOE or the New York City Public Schools. That would be through community schools typically, where you'll find special education, or a District 75 program. District 75 program is for children with more profound, higher needs. There's nothing bad about District 75. I have to always do this in every presentation that I've done. District 75 is not a bad place. It is not a place where kids with disabilities that are hopeless go. That is not the case at all whatsoever. I am here to dispel all those rumors. The programs in District 75 are wonderfully created. There are not enough of them, to be honest. And yes, so please, if you hear bad characterizations of District 75, please take that in one ear and out the other, because that is not the case. District 75 is only special education for children with higher needs. That is all it is, period. District 79 is for that alternative student. It might be a student that is working during the day and can only go to school at night, or working during the night and can only go during certain hours of the day. It might be a student who only needs like 2 or 3 classes to graduate, and they don't need to be there all day, so they can take it at their convenience. That's District 79. It's alternative schools and programs. It is nothing, that's nothing more than that. But yes, but you can find special education in all those places. If your child goes to a charter school or a non-public funded school, then typically that will be through the New York City Department of Education's, what is it called? It would be the Central Committee on Special Education. They will organize it for that school and provide it that way. But we'll talk about charter schools and non-public schools here in a minute. Due
And
process.
JC,
Yes.
sorry, before we continue, we do
Yeah,
have a question in the chat by
Mhm.
Ms. Jacqueline. She's asking, what parental rights does one have if the school is looking to expel student placed in an NPS? Should they keep the child in that school until the DOE finds an appropriate placement?
That's a very unique question, very unique case. So typically, the Department of Education will keep the school in the same program until they can find the next school. Now, you have what is called the CBST. Um, and the CBST is a centralized committee on special education. I forget what the acronym stands for literally at this moment. But that centralized special education team, they're like at the district level, and they're going to be the ones who are looking for schools and sending them to the parent for review if this is something that you would consider. And yes, I have seen parents that have said yes. Right off the bat, they found something that they wanted. I have had parents that have like, I do not want that school. I do not want that school. I do not want that school. It is a no all the way around. Um, it just depends. So yes, typically you will hold that student in um, their previous program before you move them. But yes, I hope that answered your question. If not, please feel free to ask further. But yes, so due process rights, you will exercise those when you do not agree with an IEP team's recommendations. What can you do? You have the mediation, you have the impartial hearing, and you have the state complaint. You also have dependency case when the district is trying to make sudden changes and you're like, no, that's not happening. So we're going to go really quick through the special education process. This presentation is typically one that I've done in an hour and a half on its own. We're going to go through it in like 15 minutes, okay? So who's involved in the process? The IEP team is you, the parent, or the legal guardian. The child, if appropriate, I always recommend just bring them in just to say hi, say hello, tell them how they're doing, what they're feeling, what they like about the school, what they don't like about school. These are good things to just have conversations about no matter what. Also, the school-based support team. Uh, so um, this is the social worker, the teacher, special education teacher, school psychologist, the district representative in New York City. The district representative is typically also the school psychologist. They have two roles, which I personally find is conflicting, but that's a whole other conversation you can have with me privately. Or it is the Committee on Special Education for students that are in non-public or in charter schools. So yes, and we'll talk about that. Identification, remember, if you have concerns around developmental milestones or you notice your child's having trouble in school, we got to know those causes, right? And how that's impacting their ability to learn. Um, you might notice that your child isn't developing certain skills at the same rate as other children their age or other family members their age. Your child isn't talking at the age of 3 years old. Your child is very asocial. Your child doesn't like certain things or is sensitive to touch. These are things that we're like, hey, wait a second, I suspect something, but I don't know what it is exactly. And how would you? We're not supposed to know everything. None of us are encyclopedias. So yes, before receiving special education related services, a full and individual initial evaluation must be completed to see if the child has a disability and is eligible, right? Remember, evaluation determines eligibility. Why is evaluation necessary? It finds the reasons that why a child is having trouble in school. It looks for why they're struggling. It also tries to explain why they're demonstrating certain behaviors, language issues, communication barriers. It also is there to gather information, to determine their needs, and to make decisions and guide those decisions when it comes to the programming for special education of your child. An evaluation should answer or help us understand, does the child have a disability that requires the provision of special education related services? What are the child's specific educational needs? What special education services and related services are appropriate for addressing those needs? The initial evaluation, first time, the child must be evaluated in all areas of suspected disability. A parent must give informed written consent for initial services as well. So you went ahead and signed off on all the evaluations. Now you got to sign off on the services too, right? So yes, schools must obtain that informed parental consent before special education related services are initially provided. That's so important. A school district, remember, has 60 school days. 60 school days, that is to do the evaluations and to develop an IEP. Whether they want to do it 30 and 30, that's their prerogative. The thing is, they have 60 school days. So if the school district is closed for Rosh Hashanah or Christmas or July 4th, that day does not count. Other than that, if the district office is open, even if it's the summer and some of the schoolhouses are closed, if the district office is open, it's a school day. The parent and school district can agree to another timeline if the child moves to a new school district. So if you move to a new school district, right? If you're in Brooklyn and you move to Manhattan or to another borough, a borough to borough, or from another borough or from the city to upstate New York, that changes the timeline, okay? So just keep that in mind. IDEA says that a school district has 60 days to initiate and complete both the evaluation and IEP development upon the receipt of parental consent. So if nothing has happened because you're holding on getting consent, please remember that is on you. Once you give that consent though, the clock is ticking. So yes, once they have evaluated the child, the school district has 30 days to develop and initiate an IEP. Put your request in writing always, no matter what. I'm not even going to finish this sentence. Whatever request you have, do it in writing. It's so important. Do it in writing. Let there be a record. Do an email. An email is great. You can't erase it. Once it's on the internet, it's there forever. And that's true. So yes, nobody can deny that they didn't get it. There's a timestamp. There's everything you need on it. Put your request in as writing as soon as you think you want to do something for your child, whether that's an evaluation, a change in their IEP, a certain request. Do it all in writing. Make sure there's a record. If you're not keeping a record of that because it's not in writing, say it's a phone call, make sure you have a little notebook and say, I spoke with JC Cortez, Director of Training and Development at Synergia on September 29th at 11:30 a.m. and we discussed this about my child, and this was the promise or the solution that JC proposed. That's documenting your phone call. Cover your bases. Sources of information. Remember, when it comes to evaluations, we need to do a variety, right? A gamut. Aptitude and achievement tests, parental input, teacher recommendations, a doctor's report, a specialist report, social and cultural backgrounds, right? If you practice a certain religion, there are certain things you probably don't want your child to do that other students might. So if you don't tell anybody, nobody's going to know. We don't, it's not automatic. We have to communicate those things. If there's a death in the family, we still have to communicate those things too. Those things impact our children as well, not just us. So yeah, adaptive behaviors, age appropriate behaviors. Also, information from all resources must be documented. Documentation is so important. The assessment process, an evaluation can include a physical exam, a psychoeducational exam, classroom observations, a social history, right? How was your pregnancy? Did you take prenatal vitamins? Did you have any accidents or injuries? Was it a difficult pregnancy? Was your labor difficult? These are things that we need to know. Is there history of any type of disability in your family? Those are things that we want to know in a social history. Other appropriate assessments may also include psychological development, speech and language assessments, health, hearing tests, vision tests, motor skills, cognitive skills, behavior, understanding behavior. Functional behavior assessment is a specific type of evaluation that helps us understand the causes of what's happening before a certain behavior, what the behavior is, and what happens after it. Also language. Language, if your child is a non-native speaker, they haven't, you're a new immigrant to New York City, welcome, first of all. But if your child is not a native speaker, you also need to, those evaluations have to be given in a child's primary method of understanding. So if that is not in English, that exam has to be done in whatever language that child speaks.
JC, before
Yes.
we continue,
Mm-hmm.
we do have a comment in the chat and a question in the Q&A.
Well,
So I'll
go
just
for it.
begin with the question
Mm-hmm.
from Ms. Gamaida. She
Mm-hmm.
did write in Spanish, so I'll just translate it for you quickly. So she
Go ahead.
just states, my child is 12 years old and is 6 to 1 to 1. And she just started at a new school because they moved boroughs. She explains that her current teacher at this new school is saying that she will possibly not be in the 6 to 1 to 1 program for next year. And she wants to know how can she deny that, the change of program?
So you would need to talk to, before the school district makes that change, they have to give you notification. So until they give you notification, nothing's happening. Until you've received prior written notification, you know, saying a teacher telling you that that might happen is also saying it might not happen. They don't know one way or another, so it's too soon for you to act. Now, if you want to share with your child's IEP team at the next meeting that a teacher shared with you that your child might not be in the 6-to-1 placement, then that would be the appropriate place to tell them. If you want to if you want to notify the IEP team, the new IEP team, of what was said, you can do that now. You can send them an email and say, "Hi, this is what this teacher shared with me, and I am concerned about it. Nothing has happened yet, but I am against this." Firmly against this, and I look forward to discussing this further with you. That way you kind of put it on the record, you've documented it as well in the same instance, um, and hopefully that'll help you. But yes, but until it actually happens, nothing, you can't do anything. But you can go on record and say, I heard this, I don't want this, and I'm saying it now.
Thank you, JC.
Yeah.
And then we also have a comment from Mr. Larry. He states his son has a 504 and they were seeking an IEP, but the evaluation team denied the request for an IEP despite their son having a diagnosis of ASD. He does have a high IQ and has good grades. One of the evaluation team stated to them that the purpose of the IEP is not to give him an quote unquote unfair advantage academically. Is there a reason that the school's evaluation team would resist recommending an IEP?
It's a good question. It's a good question. And a 504 plan is typically to support a child with medical needs, right? So if you, medical needs as opposed to educational supports. So in this case, what it sounds like, and again, I don't have the specifics in front of me, but what it sounds like is your child has a 504 plan to support whatever medical needs that they have, but they don't have any academic needs, despite the diagnosis of autism. And a documented high IQ, which would say that the child doesn't have an intellectual disability. They might have a developmental disability with the simple fact that they have autism, but it isn't something that is compromising the student's educational access to the general curriculum. Therefore, they might not need supports. Now, Tati, repeat the first part of that for
Of
me.
course.
They're denying the evaluations.
So they were seeking an IEP in the evaluation team. I'm just assuming at this point they've made it to the evaluation, denied the
Hmm.
request for an IEP.
Hmm.
So a parent is asking, is there a reason why the school's evaluation team would resist recommending an IEP, even though there is a diagnosis?
I can't think that they would resist. I can't think that there's a reason they should resist, because if you suspect a disability and there's already a diagnosis, you still need to explore and see if this child is having any challenges. Now, if your child isn't having any challenges with education and learning, then that might be their reason, but it's still a little unclear as to why. So, what I would say is that whenever the school district rejects your suggestion, they do have to provide you with justification. So let's say in the IEP, this year we'll use the previous example, right? The 6-to-1 placement setting. If, for example, this parent wanted to say on record they do not want a six, or they recommend 6-to-1 setting. If the school district changes the setting, they have to put on there, even though parent Miss 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 Mrs. Smith says she does not want her child to be in a 6-to-1 or does want her child to be in a 6-to-1 setting. This IEP team concludes that that is not uh, good. The child needs something less restrictive, in this case, a 12-to-1, and it would also include a justification. The school cannot simply deny you without justification. The school always has to give you justification. So I would focus, excuse me, on what that justification is and go from there. But if your child is having difficulties accessing the general curriculum or challenges in learning, and you suspect it is because of autism or their diagnosis, I think you need to make the case a little bit more clear as to what your concerns are that they might not be seeing. But as terms of giving them an academic advantage, I needed more than that. I would ask for
Yes,
more than that.
JC, he does follow up with saying, what about social development behavior issues in literacy?
So behavioral issues, definitely. We know that socialization skills are a challenge for people with autism in general, regardless of where you are in terms of developmental disability or intellectual disability. Where you are on that spectrum. But yes, that would be something that you could get supports and through an IEP. For example, you could get counseling. You could get psychological services as well, psychiatric services in some cases. So that might be reason. I would explain what those behaviors are in case the school district isn't seeing them. And in terms of literacy, if the child still has literacy issues, then the child needs to be evaluated for learning disabilities, whatever that disability is. Their learning disability is the largest classification of disability, typically around the world. Certainly here in New York City, that is the largest. And typically that qualifies as dyslexia, where you transpose letters, dyscalculia, where you transpose numbers, and dysgraphia, where you see different images. Those are the big three, but there are hundreds, literally. So if that is something, literacy is a concern, I would definitely explain that. Those are sufficient reasons to keep doing evaluations, just from what you've shared with me. So thank you for sharing that. Was there anything else, Tati?
My bad. He just clarified not literacy, financial um literacy.
Financial literacy, you could make that an IEP goal um, for something that you would want them to learn. Um, that could be something that could be included. But yes, but thank you.
Okay. We do
Uh,
have another
mhm,
question in the
yeah.
Q&A by Miss Molly.
Hmm.
She says, regarding the ASD IEP issue, to be
Yes.
eligible for an IEP, one of the requirements is that a student's academic progress must be hindered by their disability. If a student is able to achieve high grades, but it comes at the expense of the child's health, for instance, a child has too much has to work much harder studying outside of the classroom to compensate for a lack of support within the classroom, could that be considered in terms of eligibility?
It could be considered. Sounds like I have a fellow professional in the room. Um, I I think with the other issues, though, that are being brought to the attention, I think it still merits further evaluation in this case. Okay, let's zip through this. We have 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and this is good. These questions are good. Keep them coming, please. I definitely want to cover specialized transportation and the NYCSA account for you, so I'm going to speed this up. So yes, uh, parental role. Your role as a parent is important in the evaluation process because you know your child best. You can provide information about observations of your child. You are the expert after all. Remember, you also are the the gatekeeper of information as well. You have all that information on cultural practices, linguistic practices, right? Your child might speak a unique dialect of Spanish. Your child may have certain cultural practices, whether that's religious or otherwise. You also have traditional family practices, right? Need to make sure that these are known. Remember, classification tips: classification does not equal diagnosis. Classification is what impacts your child's learning the most. Do not assume that the classification process is a scientific process best left to professionals. Speak up, use your voice, ask questions, challenge assumptions, ask for documentation, show me the data, show me why. In this case of this gentleman, tell me more, tell me why. There's a movie, I think it was Philadelphia, and the juror says, can you explain it to me like I'm a 6-year-old? Do that. I use it all the time. Works wonders. Speak it to me in plain language. Ask for evaluation areas where you suspect your child is having problems. Understand the definition of a classification category and understand if that's the one that best fits your child. This is public information on the federal website. This is law that has been enshrined in our legislation for more than 40 plus years. It's there. Classification should accurately describe a student's major challenges. And remember, you can always challenge areas of disagreement. These are the 13 classifications of IDEA: autism spectrum, deafness, deafblindness, emotional disturbance, hearing impairment, learning disability. I put an asterisk by there because that's the largest. Intellectual disability is when you have an IQ less than, what was it, Tati, is it 170? Yes. Multiple disabilities, orthopedic impairment, other health impairment, speech and language impairment, traumatic brain injury, and visual impairment that includes blindness. These are the 13 classifications. You notice that ADHD is not on here. That does not mean that ADHD doesn't challenge people, or that we don't see psychiatric diagnoses on here either. That's because if it impairs somebody in a different way, it might probably be under other health impairment. So, or multiple disabilities, right? So just remember, it's what is impacting the child's ability to learn the most. If you want an independent evaluation, you can request an independent evaluation at the public's expense for each district evaluation you disagree with. An independent evaluation is defined as an evaluation conducted by a qualified examiner who is not employed by the public agency responsible. So let's say you don't like the district's school psychologist evaluation results. You disagree with them. You can request an independent educational evaluation at the taxpayer's expense, at the school's expense, basically. And you can do that. You have to make a request for it. It cannot be done through a mediation. It has to be done through an impartial hearing if the school district disagrees with you. If there's something, you have to always justify why you want it, right? Nobody's just going to give it to you willingly. You can also go and get evaluations done independently without the public's expense. So like say you want to go to Child Mind Institute or YAI for a certain evaluation. There might be a waiting list to get on there, but you can still get that evaluation that way. But if you share that, if you don't like those results, then you don't have to share those because the public didn't pay for them. However, if you do like those results and submit them to the IEP team is not obligated by law to implement those. They can take them as suggestions, but they are not obligated to take them into account and implement them. So it's a little bit of a technical navigation there. Evaluation tips. Requests must be in writing. Keep a copy of the request. Use email. Explain your child's challenges and why an evaluation is needed. Express all your concerns. This is what I would tell the father about this child with autism that they don't want to do an IEP. Express all your concerns. Share important information with the IEP team about your child's performance and your concerns. Get written informed consent for evaluations and know which assessments will be used. Why are you doing this one? Why are you not doing this one? I heard that this evaluation might do this. If you're not understanding these evaluations, talk to your child's pediatrician, talk to your child's primary care physician, understand which evaluations are out there. And yeah, in the case of behavioral issues, talk to a psychologist, behavioral psychologist especially. Remember, you have the right to request an independent educational evaluation in writing if you disagree with the district's evaluation results. This is the functional behavior assessment. We're going to talk about it really quickly. It's to look at why a child is behaving in a certain way and to understand the environment around that child when they're doing it. Because for some reason, oh, the child does this when they're at school, not when they're at home. They never do this when they're at home. That might very well be true. You're not lying. So why is it happening at school? Is there something in that environment? Is there something that the child is exposed to that is just triggering them? We have to figure that out, right? So the functional behavior assessment is basically weeks of observation by the school psychologist, and it's looking for what's happening when that behavior happens, right? What happens immediately before it, what happens during it, and what happens after it. Is the child trying to avoid something? Is the child trying to protect themselves? Is the child trying to react in a way that's seeking attention? And what is the behavior itself? Are they biting somebody? Are they hitting somebody? Are they throwing something? And what are the consequences? What do the consequences do? Are we lavishing unexpected attention on this child and that's what actually they're yearning for? Are they actually, do they have a physical need and we're not giving them something, right? Are they hungry in this moment, right? Whenever we see a child, baby, right, they're crying. We don't like, oh my God, they can't talk. What are they doing? Are they hungry? Are they sleepy? Do they want to be held? What is it? We're trying to play a guessing game. It's kind of the same thing, except the child's older and they no longer can be held. So we're trying to figure out that behavior. FBAs are required when a student exhibits a behavior that interferes with their learning or the learning of other students. So if they can't learn because their own behavior, or they can't learn because they're interrupting other kids, whether that is violent or not, it's not the issue. It's interrupting learning of others. And the FBA is supposed to give us causes for that reason. And if that's done, if we can figure out what's going on, then we'll develop what's called a behavioral improvement plan, a BIP or a BIP. If either one of these is developed, they will be included in the IEP. Charter schools, we're coming to the end. Charter schools, the DOE is so, you don't want your child in a public school, in the New York City public schools. For whatever reason, we're not going to talk about that. That's not what we're talking about today. But you don't want your child in a public school, you want them at a charter school. Fine, that's your choice, absolutely. Charter schools are not obligated to provide all the services that are in your child's IEP. So before you enroll your child in a charter school, if your child has an IEP already, I always tell parents, give a copy of your child's IEP to the charter school before you enroll them and ask them, can you provide all of these services? And then they will respond to you and tell them to respond to you in writing. It's easy for an enrollment officer or somebody recruiting to say, oh yeah, we can do that, we can do that, we can do that. And then all of a sudden they go to Success Academy or another academy and they're like, oh, actually we can't implement this IEP that way. And they're not obligated to. So yeah, in a charter school, they have that autonomy. If they want to create programs for supporting children with literacy disabilities, typically dyslexia or something like that, and they have a great demand, then they'll do it. They might do it. If they don't have the population to support hiring all those people, they might not do it. So yeah, so I always tell a parent, give them a copy of the IEP, tell them to respond to you what they can provide and what they can't. And then you have in writing, you know, the ability to say, okay, my child's not going to get this, but they're going to get this. Is that enough? And then have that conversation, because the charter school has to go through the DOE to get the supports they don't have, right? So they will have to contact the Committee on Special Education at the New York City Public Schools office, who will be the one responsible for providing those services with an outside provider. An IEP must be designed always to be meeting what your child needs, not what a charter school can offer. A charter school should be able to explain to you in writing what they can provide. 504 plan. 504 plan. Before the American with Disabilities Act, the ADA, a federal anti-discrimination civil rights law applied to any school, public or charter that takes federal money. Any agency that takes federal money cannot discriminate against people with disabilities, is what 504 said. And this includes educational services and testing, extracurricular activities. You remember what I was saying earlier? It was like, if we're all going to the Bronx Zoo, it's not just for the kids that are non-disabled or that don't have an IEP. All students are going to the Bronx Zoo. So yes, we can't exclude anybody. That's what 504 did. It also says we can't discriminate when it comes to physical access, discipline, right? You can always ask a school for a 504 plan instead of or in addition to an IEP by contacting the school Section 504 coordinator. Every school has a Section 504 coordinator. And there are two different sets of needs that I was covering. And this is what we were talking about earlier with the question that we received. A 504 plan typically is supportive of a child who's having difficulties in life activities. That could be talking, that could be walking, or anything like that. It is supportive typically of medical needs just by that nature, whereas an IEP focuses on education. Remember, individualized education program. So the two can happen concurrently. It's not typical, but it can happen. Typically, if a child has medical needs, they'll also be included in an IEP. But if it's more medical than educational, we're going to probably have a 504 plan instead. So yes, there was a
JC,
question. Yeah.
yes, in the chat. I mean, not the chat, the Q&A box about 504.
Yes.
Um, does a 504 force a charter school to provide services for dyslexia slash dysgraphia?
No, it does not. Those are not medical. It doesn't force the school. It doesn't force the school. It's more of an educational, since it's a disability and it's a IDEA a disability, classified disability. It would fall under an IEP. And a charter school is not obligated to provide all the services on an IEP. However, if the charter school isn't going to give those services, the child still has the ability to get those services through the Department of Education that has to be coordinated through the charter school. So the charter school will contact the DOE, or the New York City Public Schools, and they'll talk to the Committee on Special Education, and they will talk to them and arrange for those services to be provided. Now, that might not look pretty. You know, in public schools, we have all of the faculty and administration on site typically. We have the school psychologist, we have the guidance counselor, we have the special education teachers, we have all of those providers and supporters there on site. Whereas a charter school, because they don't have the staffing for that or they don't fund that, they're going to do it through the Department of Education. And the DOE says, okay, we can provide these services, but it might be at an external site. It might be at it doesn't have to be within the school, right? So if I'm going to provide you with therapies, right, you might have to go to an external location to get that therapy done. So that will be the drawback to this question. And that's the drawback, honestly, when it comes to charter schools, when it's a service that they are not providing within an IEP plan.
JC,
Good
I know
question.
we're
Yes.
coming to an end. So the
Yes.
person that originally posed a question for 504, they
Yes.
want to know the sensory processing disorder is it considered medical or it would be under other?
Sensory processing. It could fall under either. I don't have enough information with that question, and unfortunately, we don't have enough time to keep going on that question because sensory can be autism related, sensory can be related to TBIs, TB sensory can be related to diabetes. Um, it can be related to either, so it can go either way. Unfortunately, I wish I could give you a better answer. So we come to the end of the presentation. I'm going to zip through this. If you give me 10 extra minutes, I can get you through the rest of this presentation. New York City Schools account. What is it? You can verify many aspects of your child's education through the New York City Schools account. They do not have to be a public school student to have this account. Most students have this account, including charter school students. There you will find important notifications, the school strike, what happened, what's going on. Also, transportation updates and details. Your child's bus route is being changed. Something's going to happen with the transportation on this day. Somebody asked in the pre-registration questions, how can you verify if the school is providing related services? This is one way, the New York City Schools account. It will show you typically the last 3 to 5 instances. So if your child receives speech therapy, it will show you the last 3 to 5 sessions and dates and the provider of who provided those. So you can verify, right? It'll also provide you with information on graduation tracking, you know, like, hey, your child needs 20 more credits to graduate. And you should also typically be able to find a copy of your child's IEP. So how do I get one, right? If you don't already have one, go to schoolsaccount.nyc, and this is the landing screen of that. It's just so you can have an idea. You'll have your first student. If you have multiple students, you can add them all, so you don't have to do that. You can report bullying, as you can see here. There are free courses from the Department of Education on how to access certain resources. It's a wonderful thing. It comes in different languages too, and not just in Spanish, but other languages such as French and Haitian Creole. Um, there's even some Punjabi and some great resources. You can also find information about your student. So yes, you will all get a copy of this presentation. So these hyperlinks, please don't feel free to write them down. But yes, follow the instructions on the New York City Public Schools website. This is their website here. If you do not have a letter, oh, I see a typo, with a creation code, contact your child's school. You'll need a letter that has a creation code. And then once you're in, this is what you'll see. This is what you'll see about your student. You can see grades and assessments or evaluations, reading levels, promotion tracker, graduation tracker, student documents, the IEP, attendance records, school schedule, student wellness, transportation, all of the details that impact your child in these aspects, if something applies to them, should be here. If it's not, speak to your school. You can start with your parent coordinator, or you can reach out to your IEP team as well, or your school's principal. If this is, for example, the transportation screenshot, so you can look here. These are the type of service that your child is receiving. In this case, it's door to door. School contact email, school contact phone number. We see it here in the modifications. This child has a wheelchair. They need assistance getting on the bus, and they need a space for the chair. We also see in additional transportation accommodations, we see limited time travel, 2 seats required, as well as air conditioning. That is all in your NYCSA account when it comes to transportation. And so yes, we also see the date range. So this is from the last school year, 9/13/21 to 6/30/22. We see also the bus schedule that includes on Monday to go to school, the pickup location will be here, and the route number will be here, and the drop-off location will be there. And this is the name of the bus company, and this is the name of the bus company's their phone number. All of that is in the NYCSA account. That's pretty granular detail, don't you think? So yes, specialized transportation. Specialized transportation is an IEP related services, and as such requires eligibility. It is not based on your desire for your child to have AC. It is on your child's need. Again, as we've said throughout this presentation, that's something they need. It is required. Therefore, eligibility needs to be determined. This is different. Specialized transportation is different from the simple yellow bus service eligibility that says if you live more than half a mile from your school, you automatically get a bus. Or if you're a homeless student or temporarily housed student in New York City, that is also different. So those categories get an automatic yellow bus, but this is specialized transportation. How is it specialized? It could be curb to school, what we call door to door. They pick you up at your child's doorstep and they take your child to the school's doorstep. That's why it's called door to door more commonly. Climate controlled, AC, right? Heater, time limited. We saw that, limited time. There's 60 minutes, there's 90 minutes, there's 75 minutes. There's a bus paraprofessional, right? My child needs a bus paraprofessional to ride with them. Also, we also have a bus attendant. This was previously called bus matron, but because it's not just women, and we call it a bus attendant now. These are examples. This is not an exhaustive list by any means, but this is how transportation can be specialized for your child. Eligibility, really quick, requires that a parent complete a separate form with the Office of Pupil Transportation and is the request for a medical recommendation. And you can give that to your child's primary care physician, not their specialist, but their primary care physician. If that's their pediatrician or somebody else, that's who it needs to go to. And you can bring that to the IEP team. I wouldn't bring it to a meeting. I would just send it by email or writing, make sure that they get it, and they will get it to the Office of Pupil Transportation. You will also need to complete a separate HIPAA form. HIPAA form is medical release records, and that should also be provided. So that way, the Department of Education or New York City Public Schools doctors can talk to your child's primary care physician without having you to relay the message and all of that. It just expedites things much more quicker. Most importantly, if you do get this, you have to renew it each year. Every year you have to renew this. There's not something that says automatically you're going to do this, you're going to get this. Nobody does that. And it is not the decision of the IEP team at all. This is the Office of Pupil Transportation that makes these decisions, and they're physicians. So it is not the IEP team. If you have a disagree with that, that's a whole other process. It can be appealed. It is challenged. Everything can be appealed. Eligibility for specialized transportation requires this, yes, and you will not receive, yes. Specialized transportation. If you have doubts and questions about your child's specialized transportation, step one, get the route number, check the bus company, look at the NYCSA account, call your child's school. The bus company should call you with pickup times. Step two, check and verify accommodations. Does the NYCSA account reflect the current IEP? Maybe there's a lot of room for human error when it comes to data entry, because we know if it reflects wrong on the computer, either somebody put it in wrong, something's reading wrong, it might be a person error, it might be a technical glitch. Before we get mad at anybody, let's just make sure everything's matching up. Also, does the IEP indicate special transportation needs? Maybe it's looking at a different draft. Maybe it's looking at something else. Maybe it hasn't been updated. Let's make sure of that. Also, will and can that bus company provide those accommodations? Remember, if it's in the IEP, it has to be done. The school has a legal obligation to provide it. And it doesn't matter what the reason. They don't get to say the dog ate my homework, whatever. And yes, step three, having problems, call OPT. There is their number. You'll get a copy of this. If you can't get root information, start first with the school and always file a complaint. Get the incident number. If you're facing more parent-facing information on the OPT website, as here at the bottom for your future reference. And advocacy tips last, make sure you read everything, read it twice, read it 3 times, revisit it later, reread it later, understand how disability impacts learning. Also get information you need for available resources, ask plenty of questions, communicate and collaborate effectively and assertively with school personnel. Assertively does not mean aggressively, remember. Organize and keep written records. And remember, you are not alone in this. There are parent centers like Synergias, Advocates for Children, include NYC. There are advocates that are here to help you. Resources abound, plenty of information. Q&A, I'm up for it. And yes, thank you for listening. I hope everybody has learned something or has a better understanding after everything has been said and done.
Thank you, JC. So this, if JC's up for it, we could do a quick Q&A. However, as stated before, everybody will get a copy of the presentation in a follow-up email, and our recording will be available via our Facebook page and YouTube page in a few days. I can provide my email and JC's email should you have any personal question you would like to address. And we thank you all for your time. At this moment, I am going to pull up a poll. We really would appreciate it if everybody had the chance to fill it out. It really helps us out here and to see what is that parents are wanting for us to present and everything else. So once again, thank you for your time, JC. If you're down for a Q&A, parents are more than welcome to submit their questions via the chat or the Q&A box right now before we conclude our day today.
I'll stick around. Yes, if there are issues that we have not answered, please feel free to reach out to us. You can always contact our intake line as well at 212-643-2840, extension 602. And we will see in what areas we can help you with. our assistance. We provide one-on-one special education advocacy with our advocates. And our special education specialist. We can accompany you to IEP meetings, 504 meetings, all of those things. We can help you navigate special education challenges as well. So yes, but I am here if you have any questions. Yes. Okay. Well, I look forward to your emails, and if not, Tati, thank you so much.
Of
This
course,
has
thank you.
been great, and have a great day, everybody. Enjoy the weekend. Stay dry. Row your boats.
Thank you, JC. And
All
for those
right.
watching us on Facebook, thank you so much for watching via the live stream.